Good morning, dreamers! Welcome back to this new appointment with my tutorials on dreams. As I have told you extensively in recent weeks, today we are going to deal with camera movements. To do so, we are going to look at them on my latest Star Wars short film. For those who haven't seen it, leave the link up, down, everywhere. I'm very happy to have finally managed to finish this work. Between work and other commitments, it was a long journey to finish. I had even lost the files. What a mess! So we are going to see the camera movements precisely on this project. Little Kin, you are asking me for more tutorials. I'm trying to make them as fast as possible, and I thank you for your support and patience. I'm very happy that you liked the little short film I made on Astrobot. I used the doll system that I'm studying for a much bigger project, and already there I was quite satisfied. There are much more complex and powerful software that you can use for the doll system, but their learning curve is very slow and high, such as Adobe Animate or Cartoon Animator. Dreams instead of creating all this from nothing, but it takes a lot of patience and above all, an iPad with a lot of memory. I think Dreams is really what you Procreate is for drawing, even if still has a few tools. Always remember the price of this app, without having to make any subscription. It just takes a lot of practice. A lot of practice that is leading me to the new project I'm currently working on, where I hope to overcome both my limitations and those of Dreams, with the use of new special effects and framing. Little information to remind you of my participation in London at InMotion. For those who don't know, it's a digital animation event where some artists working with Dreams will also be present. The event will be on 10 and 11 October, but for those who will not be there, I will make a video recap. It will be a nice opportunity to go and see some news. I also hope on Dreams date that Team Savage will also be present. However, let us now look at the camera movements, for what they were used for and how they are used. As first thing, I open Procreate where I have drawn all the material I need on Dreams. I started with the background that is formed of some elements, like these layers of stars, which have a transparent background, because I will have to superimpose some of these layers on top of each other. It will be simple for you to understand the camera movements with this type of background. I had to use not many elements to give the idea of three-dimensionality and space, and simply for me because I only had to move the background and a few elements without having to create many three-dimensional objects. I then simply had stars, planets, asteroids and suns for background elements, and then the spaceship in the foreground. All elements that are simple to realize. If for example I want to make a city, I have many more elements to put in, if I want to give an idea of perspective and three-dimensionality. But the limitation is not so much human, as Dreams that cannot hold a very large number of tracks. Another challenge I will face with my new project. Dreams is not a 3D software, but with the available tools we can make a fake 3D. Making a whole city from above is very complicated. For example, each building will consist of several levels to be able to move in 3D. Think of adding 10, plus other elements that move like people or plants. But remember, nothing is impossible. In the case then that we are going to see today, the space is perfect. Few elements on the screen, but they render the idea of perspective and fake 3D very well. First of all, let's take a look at the specification of this canvas. Almost 13,000 pixels by 11,000 pixels, very large. I had to create a huge canvas on Procreate so that it would be detailed and give me the ability to move it freely in Dreams without going outside the edge. I needed the stars to always stay in the background for the entire space scene. Will I move the elements here and there? Now let's go to Dreams to see how I animated the scene. We'll mainly look at the first part of the work to help you understand how I applied the camera movements. The first thing I do is hide some layers that I don't need, like all the titles, for example. They aren't needed for what we are looking at today. All through in the final work they are used to enhance the illusion of fake 3D. Now let's take a look at where the background stars are, which are grouped here, along with other elements like this nebula. If I zoom out a bit, here it is, along with a planet. I added this nebula to help me have a more visible landmark in the background, besides the stars. And it also helps the scene to make it more beautiful and dynamic, with this movement to the left. Nebula behind and the stars in front, moving toward the viewer, to give the idea of depth. Closing the layer for the moment, there is also a planet that also moves in perspective and will enter the screen going forward in the sequence. It will move upward to give the idea that the camera instead moves downward, to frame the scene following the titles. We also close this level and see our stars. The main level of stars are three, from farthest to nearest, and they move in the direction of the viewer. I had to add, in some cases, other levels of stars, such as these two levels. In some places I reached the limit of level with the camera movements and had to add more layers of stars to leave no empty space. As in this case. At this point I reached the level limit and thus added another layers of stars. To avoid any holes. It's work that I have done in progress, of course. Always remember to look at and review the work going forward slowly, to avoid any problems or shortcomings. As I told you, however, there are three main levels of stars. Each level has a zoom movement that brings them closer to the viewer. This helps the viewer understand that the spaceships go in the direction of the background, while the group of level of stars and other elements will have another movement that will be either side, shift, up, down, rotation and zoom. The individual star levels, as you can see, the trend curves are linear, because it will need this movement to be homogeneous. As we have seen in the trend curves, I can decide the dynamics of the movement, and for this level I need to be linear. In this first phase, there is both the perspective part that we have seen in other tutorials, and the trend curves part that if you have not seen yet, I recommend that you go and see. Now I'm going to close a few groups. Don't ask me the number of levels, I can only say too much. Now play. As you see, the stars are coming toward us. The force is powerful in me. It works very well with this type of background. There are few elements to move, but they give a good idea of perspective. I then gave movement to all levels of stars, at the beginning to the end of the timeline, all in about 3 minutes. And I did the same on the group comprising the planet. Even in this case, the movement will always be linear and towards the viewer. And as I show you, its anchor point is here. The planet should come towards us and gradually disappear to the left. I tell you this by referring to the tutorial I did on perspective. If you miss it, the link below. to give the right idea of perspective and if will come faster than the stars. See it now also from here, the planet arrives faster than stars, being much farther away arrive more slowly. Now let's look at what interests us most, and that is the camera movement. At this point there is a movement of the whole group in the background, both rotating and zooming and shifting, so that the viewer's eyes follow the arriving spaceships. Our bad guys arrive and the camera lingers on them. Much level. After a few blasts, the Jedi spaceships arrives, and as you can see, the camera goes to follow its movement. The movement of the camera, as you can see, arrives a little behind the spaceship, as if the cameraman filming the scene cannot keep up with the speed of the ship. This gives a sense of greater dynamism and realism to the scene. With the screen elements in the foreground that are in constant motion, I have to keep the background moving to make the scene always dynamic. It's a succession of rotation, movements and zoom, to try to make the viewer follow the action. How hard it's for the cameraman to stay attached to the ship's ass. To recap, background elements moving as a consequence of foreground elements. In order to make the delay effect work well, I set the keyframe of the camera movements to correspond to the movement of the spaceships, and then expanding the keyframe, I went to play with all the options, zoom, rotation and movement, in some cases anticipating the rotation and the other zoom or movement. As you can see here, pay close attention the rotational movement of the background comes a little after that of the spaceship. It's as if our cameraman is struggling to keep up with the movement. In Dreams it's very easy to modify the aspect and it's very useful to adjust. For example, only the timing of the rotation to achieve very interesting results. Now let's see the result. What a tough job being a cameraman. The spaceships are too fast. I'm very satisfied with the final work. The cameraman cost me a lot. Another tool I used here to make the scene even more dynamic is the blur filter. In the middle of each camera movement, I set it to slightly blur both the background and the spaceships. This gives an even greater sense of motion and dynamics. Something that's in motion will also be a bit blurred. And voila! At this point, as you can see, the groups split apart. Why is that? Because I had to change the anchor point of the group so that it returned to the center. The anchor point is in the center of the group, but in the next sequence I needed to return to the center of the framed screen, and for this I have divided the groups. In this next scene, where the Venator of the Republic arrives, I will need the camera to rotate around the cruiser to give the viewer the idea of arriving from above. From the first part the camera moves to look for the Venator, but to make the background stay there, and I can rotate it as I want, I have to split the groups and change the anchor point. All linear movements of levels, such as stars, do not change even if I divide the groups. This is to give continuity to the movement. This in screen helps you understand better. In the first part, the anchor point moved off the screen to the continuous camera movements. In the second, the background group remains in the same place but the anchor point changes. Be very careful when using this stratagem because the coordinates go by the anchor point. Make sure the elements are in the same place from the first to second group. Otherwise, it will be virtually impossible to get the coordinates right. Now I'm going to turn on all the levels and let's see from the beginning. I would like to remind you that if you haven't seen my tutorial on perspective, anchor point and trend curves, go and have a look. It will be very helpful. In the work you have seen today, there is much that comes from my previous tutorial. Two great tools that Dreams provide us with: movement on a single layer and movement on an entire group. And when it arrives, and I'm sure it will, the ability to distort and alter entire groups will make things even more fun. Don't get too caught up in working only with frame by frame. I hope I have sparked your curiosity, and I'm looking forward to seeing the future work of the community. In the attachment you will find my other tutorials. If there's anything you don't understand, please write in the comments. And